Hey everyone, welcome back to the Library of Parthos. My name is Sarah, and today I have a book review for The Poison Season by Rutherford. This was a book that I got in Owlcrate last month, or this month, I'm not really sure. But I saw that it was a new release. Once again, it was the cover art of not only the book sleeve, but also the cover itself that really drew me in. I was super interested and added it to my January TBR. So far, so good. I'm really sticking to my TBR this month, which is exciting. As always, I'll start off with a spoiler-free review, and then I'll get into some spoilers for the book and also sharing my thoughts of this story. Okay, so starting off with a spoiler-free summary, or trying to keep it spoiler-free at least. This is a dual point of view story about Lilo, who is I think I'm saying that right. It's phonetically spelled Lilo, so I'm hoping that that's the correct pronunciation. But she lives on the island of Endla, which is surrounded by the Wandering Forest. And the other point of view is Jaren, who is an outsider. He lives on the outside of this island of Endla, and their interactions as they learn a little bit more about the world around them and try to solve kind of this mystery of how these people have been enemies for so long. That's pretty much it, keeping it spoiler free. I don't really want to ruin much of the story, so I'll go ahead and get into my thoughts on the book and also sharing some spoilers. So if you do plan on reading this book and don't want it to be ruined, feel free to skip to the end. Okay, so just to kind of fill in any gaps, Lilo lives on the island of Endla. They are surrounded by the Wandering Forest. It's given the name the Wandering Forests for obvious reasons. It wanders around from time to time, but it currently has been around this island because the people are taking care of it. And there are certain requirements, certain sacrifices that need to be made to take care of the island. Also, the people of Endla themselves have some sort of magic, so they're able to sing and make certain things happen. They sing this hunting song, which kind of draws animals to them. That they have a bunch of different songs that they sing. And the lake that is near the island is poisonous, and anything that falls into the lake dies, like disintegrates, including people. So it's very dangerous. Every once in a while, a child is born who does not have any magic. They're called an Encantu, and they are sent away from the island after a period of time in a safe boat that does not disintegrate on the lake, because they don't have their own magic, and so anytime the islanders sing, they are impacted by that just as much as whatever other creatures are around, and so are the outsiders who live off of the island. So the main character, Lilo, well, one of the main characters, her brother is an Encantu when the story begins, so it's about time for him to leave the island, and she's dealing with all of the emotions around that, of course. The other main character, Jaren, is an outsider, and he finds that he is drawn back to the lake no matter how many times he says, I won't go back there. He's drawn to it. Eventually, he's chased by a wolf, and he has to cross the lake in the boat that was left when the Encantu children were leaving the island. So he has to cross the island, which is completely forbidden. Outsiders do not go to the other side. And in fact, there are watchers, which Lilo is in her first year of becoming a watcher, who keep an eye on things and make sure no outsiders come across the lake. And if they do, so Jaren is injured, Lilo finds him, and she decides to hide him out in a little cottage that I believe she discovered. And in the beginning of the story, her friend had been hiding a Encantu boy that had come back to the island, and then he was discovered. So he was forced to either run into the forest and try to survive, or he could try to swim across the lake, and it was quite gruesome. Anyway, so Lilo hides Jaren in this cottage until she can safely get him back across the lake, either when it freezes over or if she can figure out how to repair the boat. And of course, during this time, they develop a relationship. So as I said in my January TBR, I did classify this book as an enemies to lovers romance. I think after reading it, that still holds up. However, there really wasn't a lot of hatred between these characters, just misunderstanding. They come from two very different places and they don't know a lot about each other. And so they realize that they're not bad. Outsiders aren't bad. The islanders aren't evil. It's just they're all trying to survive in their own way and they don't understand each other. Through her interactions with Jaren, and as Lilo starts to understand a little bit more about life on the island, some things that she just didn't know as a child, she realizes that the world's a lot bigger than what she originally thought. And she starts to realize, again, that the outsiders aren't bad. At least not all of them. I'm sure there are some bad ones. But she learns about a much bigger world. She learns about things that are not available on the island to her. She starts to grow an appreciation for this small community that she grew up in, but she also understands that over time things grow and things change. And that's kind of a theme like later in the book, I would say. I did like a lot of the underlying themes and messages that were in this story, kind of tying into that. Because Lilo's so young, I think she's like 16 or 17, maybe 18. I can't remember her exact age in the story. There's a lot that she doesn't realize about the island, about the council, who is kind of the ones in charge, and even her own family. So she discovers throughout the story a couple of things. First of all, she discovers that the big one is that the forest is dependent on them. They're not dependent on the forest. And so if they want to just leave or stop sacrificing to it, they totally can. The forest is really what's in control there. She also learns that the lake naturally poisonous. I think it's every spring they put these lilies in the lake. There's something in the lilies that continues to poison the lake. And so that at first, when their ancestors first arrived in this place, it was a defense. They didn't want anyone coming across into the forest because it was very dangerous. But as time went on, it just became a tradition. Lilo also, like I said, learned some things about her family. So in the beginning of the story, you find out that her father and her uncle were both killed. And what she was told is that I think her uncle was shot with an arrow or something. Her father went back to help him. He got injured and passed away. As the story continues, we find out that Lilo's mother actually housed an outsider in the same cottage that she's been keeping Jaren in, and that outsider is the father of her younger brother Tate, who is an Encanto. He's the one that left the island, and so that kind of explains why, first of all, why he doesn't look like anyone else in their family, but also why he doesn't have any magic. And Lilo's father knew about this. He I was gonna say he was okay with it. I don't think he was okay with it, but he forgave his wife and they kind of just smoothed everything over. However, her aunt, Ketty, who's just a very petty person and very controlling, found out about it, and she didn't want word getting out about it. So she ended up, I think, killing her husband, who accidentally killed Lilo's dad. So it was very much Aunt Ketty's fault, whatever happened. And she had also been slowly poisoning her sister over the years. So Lilo discovers that her aunt has been mixing a little too much nightshade and a little too much foxglove that's no longer medicinal, it's poisonous, into her aunt's tea. So just not a very good person all around. So through all of these secrets that Lilo is uncovering, she kind of realizes that everyone, of course, had the best intentions in mind by keeping these secrets. However, it also caused a lot of harm. For example, the families of the Encanto children were separated. The children had to leave the island. Hopefully they found families on the mainland, but there's no way of them knowing that. They weren't allowed to come back. So families were being ripped apart. Of course, Lilo's family had a whole mess going on there. And so she realizes that sometimes keeping secrets isn't protecting anyone, it's not helpful, but rather you should kind of, you know, honor the decisions that were made in the past for what they were and work together to make better decisions for the future. So thinking about the lilies in the lake, right? Initially, that was a measure of protection for both the islanders and the outsiders. It's not necessary anymore. And instead of just saying like this is a tradition or maybe we should revisit this, everyone just kept continuing to do it. There's also a lot of not really talk of forgiveness, but there's a lot of forgiveness that is shown. When Lilo's mother had an affair with the outsider, whose name is Nigel, you do get to meet him toward the end of the story. Her father was very forgiving, and as Lilo learns about this now as almost an adult, you know, she could have gotten very upset and very angry, but it also helped that she was kind of doing the same thing with Jaren. She was hiding him and developed a relationship with him, that she just was understanding of the decisions that her mother made, and forgave her and didn't hold any sort of grudge or any sort of resentment toward her. We do find out at the end of the story, just to kind of close everything out, that Jaren was actually originally from the island of Enla. His mother was escaping and fell through the ice and kind of just like slid him across the ice to the shore, where the family that he grew up with, the family that he knew, found him and took him in. And so that kind of explains why he was always drawn to the lake, and whenever the islanders were singing, he wasn't impacted by it the same way. So he's eventually caught, and of course Aunt Ketty, because she's just kind of an awful person, suggests rather than giving him to the forest or telling him to take his chances in the lake, why don't we hunt him? And so they all decide to hunt him, and they sing their little hunting song that's supposed to draw the prey in, but he's not affected by the song. And so it's at that point that they realize he's an islander and they don't kill their own. So that's how he kind of survives. And he and Lilo do end up leaving the island after pretty much destroying it. And they come back and are able to find her mother and her cousin, and they find that the Wandering Forest has moved on because the islanders are no longer taking care of it. Typically, I usually like an ending where everything's wrapped up very nicely. And I would say everything was wrapped up pretty nicely in this book, but there were a couple of things that I was like, yeah, I'm glad that was the resolution that we got. First one, Aunt Ketty kind of disappeared at the end of the story, and they say we don't know if she died or if when the forest left it took her with it, and I was very okay with that. She was just not a good person, and she wasn't remorseful for like anything that she had done, so it was, for me, I was very okay with her being out of the picture. The other thing was I kind of just like that the forest just up and left, and so it's kind of like the story could continue, you know, it's now going to be somebody else's problem. And I think the last page of the book said something like, in the morning a group of villagers will wake up and wonder why there's a forest there that wasn't there before. So definitely leaves room for a lot of imagination and potential for more stories along the same line, which I really liked. I think it's pretty obvious by now how much I love a good romance story. I wasn't super impressed with it this time. It felt very rushed, and it felt almost forced. While I liked both of the characters very much, I just felt like they spent so little time together, and it wasn't meaningful time. It was just like, hey, I'm injured and you're hiding me in this cabin and I'm kind of by myself, so do you want to spend time with me? And it was like, suddenly they're in love. Kind of like, we couldn't really see that romance blossom. It was just kind of not there, and then suddenly it's here. So not a huge fan of that, but I did like the characters as just characters. The whole idea of having the Watchers, who are like kind of keeping people away from the island and also just kind of taking care of things definitely gave me Luminaries vibes, which I think it's also clear how much I loved the Luminaries. So if you have read The Poison Season and enjoyed it, I would highly recommend the Luminaries. And if you've read the Luminaries and enjoyed it, I would recommend Poison Season. Overall, glad I read it. It was a good book. I don't think I would reread it, but it was a nice, quick, easy read that I was able to finish while I was traveling. So that is it for my review of The Poison Season by Mara Rutherford. Thank you so much for watching. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!